You're listening to Big World Network.
Bloodshot Buck, Episode 8, written by W.H. Wood and Mitch K. Allan. Read by Willow Wood. His shift was finally over, hallelujah, and Brona was on last order washing up. Dristan didn't envy her in the least, and he certainly wasn't taking her shift for a third week in a row. Sneaky witch. She couldn't pull the wool over his eyes. Where did that phrase come from anyway? He wondered. His parents had such weird earth sayings. He tried to imagine his mother pulling pillowcase wadding over her eyes. He left the mess hall and crossed the main road, taking a deep, sweet breath of freedom, clearing his sinuses of dumplings and seaweed. Everything was quiet, the 10 p.m. lull, when most people were winding down for the evening in their complexes or in the rec canteen. He wondered what synths did in their downtime on the other side of the quarter. Dristan hadn't even made it halfway down the street when his flex phone started ringing. He danced to the tune for as long as he dared before answering it. "Living on the edge." "Yellow, hello?" he said to the thin, transparent device. The wires embedded between the flexible material glowed with a familiar, chapped face. Dristan grinned. Mate! Cried Ravi's hologram. "You off yet? We're in the gardens." "Right now?" "Yeah, you coming?" Despite being tired, stinking of seaweed, and his feet aching from standing on them all day, Dristan couldn't resist a call to adventure when Ravi was the one who summoned him. "I'm on my way now," he replied. He hummed a tune as he went, staring at the Centre of Operations facility down the far end of the main road, before hopping into a public transporter that drove him deeper into Civilianville. Soon it pulled up in front of the botanical gardens, and he stepped out into the warm, moderated air. Dristan passed through the facility's main doors and waited for clearance inside the decontamination foyer. Static tingled through his hair, down his neck, and the taste of iron tickled his tongue. After a minute, a green light lit up above the second door, and it opened for him with a gush of hot wind. Humid, dewy air greeted him. Dristan took a deep breath, inhaling the tanginess of nature. He didn't know much about plants or flowers or trees, and he couldn't identify the majority of, well, anything. Plants didn't grow naturally on the synth quarter. The only leafy creature he knew was a plant pot in his parents' bedroom, which they called a baby cactus. Without needing to check, Dristan knew that Ravi would be by the pissing vase. It was meant to be a water feature, something that was apparently very popular on Earth, but a waste of water in most quarter kids' opinions. Very weird, too. A metal vase set on its side so a dribble of water could leak out, hit the puddle beneath it, and then filter around for another cycle. The pissing vase. It was only as he got closer that he heard an unexpected voice, an unwelcome voice. Her voice. Sitting at the picnic bench, opposite Ravi, was Clara Grayson, intern nurse and knife in Dristan's side. Her brown curls were swept high on her head, and her red lips smiled warmly. Until she noticed Dristan, of course. Her face puckered like a cat's backside as he approached, and Ravi turned to greet him. "Driss! Took your time, didn't you?" No longer in the mood for hanging out, Dristan forced a smile and sank down beside Ravi. He still hadn't forgiven Clara for giving him only 40 minutes in the synth wards. Getting stuck up there with a cool new recruit girl almost hadn't been worth the reprimanding it earned him. Almost. But the suspicious person report Clara had filed against him hadn't been fun to deal with, and he'd scored her minus brownie points on the decent human being scale. "What's she doing here?" he asked Ravi. "Excuse me?" she snapped. Dristan ignored her, feeling stupid already.
Mate, she's right there, said Ravi. I know you've got some issue.
Issue? Cried Dristan, appalled.
But let's put that aside and know that life's too short and do the happy dance, yeah?
No.
Ravi gave him a hard look, gritting his teeth.
Stop it, he hissed. Utterly disgusted that his best mate would defer to her, Dristan turned his hateful glare on Clara.
She outglared him.
Bloody smug-eyed usurper with her perfect cocky eyebrows.
She's telling me about the demolition patients,
explained Ravi, and Dristan slumped down in defeat. Yes, yes, yes. Didn't she just have all the best stories? Good old Clara. Clever clogs Clara. He stared off into the gardens, pretending the subject bored him.
You know, the synths that got caught fighting?
Ravi went on. Yes, he knew. In fact, a surge of excitement came over Dristan. He'd met the witness that had sealed the jury's decision. Clara couldn't top that. Before he could utter a word, however, she resumed her story, voice firm. They go through gene extraction down in the basement, Clara explained. They came in at 6 a.m. and were brought back up just as I signed off duty. That's 12 hours of blood filtering, and apparently that was only the first session.
That's rough, cried Ravi, slack-jawed. Did they look different?
Clara sat taller and inclined her head, as if they had to brace themselves and, "Oh, just spit it out." I only caught a glimpse, she said, but they were brought out on gurneys looking pasty as toilet bowls. I kind of felt sorry for them. They looked so ill and already a little brain-dead.
So what happens in demolition? Asked Ravi. Do you know?
Half listening, Dristan opened his flex phone under the table and began searching for the snap of that girl he'd met in the recovery bay. What was her name? Evie? Enya? Becky? Crap. No, I don't know, answered Clara. It's way above my head. But I do know that they have to break down DNA and extract the Catharian cells. Scraping out that kind of cellular fusion is like trying to unstir sugar from a mug of tea. It's worse if you're a veteran Justicut. Most of them develop Catharian facial features, or milky skin and soft bones. They're practically a separate alien species. Found it! There she was, smiling up at the camera from her pillow, Dristan's head squeezed in beside her. It wasn't flattering of either of them. His pudgy cheeks looked rounder than usual, and Bucky's eyes— Bucky, that was her surname at least— were bloodshot, her skin sallow.
Look!
He thrust the flex screen in Clara's face.
I met Bucky, the witness who went on trial.
Affronted by the interruption, she took her sweet time focusing on the image he presented to her, utterly disinterested. So? She said at last. What do you mean, so? Dristan retreated back into his seat and sulked down at the snap. Seeking backup, he showed it to Ravi, who had already seen it. She told me the real story about what happened. Oh, the real story, huh? Ravi took the flex phone to study the picture in detail.
Yeah, he has a number and everything.
Letting out a nervous laugh, Dristan snatched his phone back. He worried Ravi would search through his contacts and see that this was a fat, planet-sized lie. He wished he had asked for her number, but asking a sick and possibly dying woman for her contact data had seemed rude. Other things were probably on her mind, like not dying. He smiled to himself, still fond of her sense of humour. What's the real story, then? Cried Clara. She folded her arms on the table and stared at him with the expectation of Dristan trying to backpedal out of his bullshit. Not today, Clara Grayson. He repeated the truths Bucky had told him, pleased by Ravi's proud expression. We chat a lot, Dristan added, unable to stop. A warning siren went off in his head. Shut up, Dristan. Stop now, Dristan. I'm actually friends with a synth. I've learnt a gigaton. Ravi shook his head, still smiling, and nudged Dristan's arm.
I can't believe you.
Yeah, neither could Dristan. But he knew how to lie to Ravi. He'd learnt that in first school, when he'd accidentally snapped Ravi's favourite ruler and convinced him that Clara had done it instead. She'd never trusted him after that. "I'm surprised she has time to chat to you," said Clara, her smile sour.
Yeah, me too,
was all Dristan could say. At that moment, Ravi's flex started ringing. He groaned.
Give me a minute, it's my mother.
He got up from the picnic bench and wandered away from the bright artificial lights, where he hid beneath a towering plant that had leaves like spades. Clara leant across the table, eyes blazing, and Dristan swallowed a cry of help. "Are you really her friend?"
How did she know? How did she know?
Dristan swept a hand over his face, double-checking he didn't have "liar" printed across his forehead. "Of course I am," she smirked. It made him sweat, intensified by the already humid atmosphere. "She's really funny. And she's recovering really well, and, Clara tilted her head, oozing mock adoration. "Wow, next you'll announce that you're dating." He didn't reply, burning up inside, and decided to watch Ravi pace back and forth as if seeing a man work his legs for the first time. Now he was thinking about Ravi's weedy legs. They were pretty weedy, and he found himself wrapped up in leg puns and what would Ravi say if he could hear his thoughts, and... "What did you say her name was?" asked Clara.
Bucky, he said hesitantly. Maybe he was wrong, and Clara knew her real name.
"Oh, how cute," she sneered. "Do you sneak out to meet her in the no zone?" Embarrassment turned to shame, turned to anger, and before he could stop himself, he blurted, "Yes." No going back now.
"I've even met her trainer, the justice who caught the demolition criminals."
"Yeah, fuck it. I met her too. I met her. How about that, Clara?" You do get around. For an instant, Dristan remembered the time Clara had gotten into a fight at school. The other girl involved had punched her in the cheek, knuckling her in the eye. Clara lost that battle. She had retreated to the wall in the playground, sunk down, hugged her knees, and wept and wept. He'd never seen a girl cry so many tears before. But she let Dristan sit next to her, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders for a whole 5 minutes. She said, "I am smart." He replied, "I know. You're a brain box, Clara Clogs." He thought maybe she'd forgive him for the lie about the ruler, but the next day, Clara's friends teased her for touching Dristan, and things went back to normal. He knew it wasn't about a ruler anymore, but sometimes he wished it was. Hating her only made his chest hurt, because he just wanted Clara to say, "I'm sorry." He just wanted her to understand that she was a smart bitch with nothing to prove to him, or Ravi. Curse his soul. "If you're friends with a justice," Clara went on, "I'll bet you could get into the just armory."
He highly doubted that.
Anishim knives have top-level security. Did you know that? Dristan nodded. Nope, he did not know that. They say the only time you'll ever see an Anishim knife in person is in your last moments.
Man, she was enjoying this.
Only second justs on active duty or higher can carry one without supervision. You should get a snap.
What? His heart pounded in his chest. She had to be joking.
Yeah, you're friends with Bucky. Get her to sneak you into the armory. You won't be doing anything wrong, just taking a snap. A friend of my dad's got in that way. You can too, right?
She straightened up as Ravi finished his call and locked back to the table. A cruel smile twisted her red lips.
"I dare you," she said.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.